Welcome to the DGD Podcast. As always, Robert Reynolds, Kobe Pierce. Guys, Georgia is the new standard of college football. We'll explain why. Michigan and Harbaugh has decided to introduce a beat Georgia period of practice. We'll talk about that. Listen, keep doubting Georgia. Listen, we're only the two-time defending national champions back to back. But keep doubting Georgia. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well. And we take the questions from the Discord, folks. Loaded show. Kobe, how are you doing, man?
Doing good, man. Halfway point in the week, halfway point in the day, at the halfway point in the week. It's all downhill from here as soon as the podcast is over today.
Hump day. Also, letting you know now, no show Monday due to the holiday. So we will return next Wednesday with a show, just giving people a heads up ahead of time. But first things first, Kobe. We'll start with this Michigan introducing this beat Georgia period of practice, right? They already have a beat Ohio State, right? That's their biggest rival. But when I heard about this, right, I wanted to sit on it because I wanted to kind of take in everything, and I think it's a compliment to Georgia, right? And I also think there's some things that could be taken away from Michigan side of things that I feel like they should be focused on themselves and bettering themselves more so than beating Georgia or right? Like I get the Ohio State part, right? But focus on yourself rather than right like a beat Georgia press. Like I'd like to know what that means, like what that part of practice entails, right? But overall, I want to get your thoughts first, so before I kind of pontificate a little bit more about it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that when you create it, like if you're at Michigan, you thinking one thing, and then when the media finds out and you hear about it, they kind of blow up and run with it. Like I saw numerous articles yesterday, like, oh, Michigan's got to beat Georgia period now, and maybe they should be worried about beating TCU since they haven't played Georgia in 2 years or whatever. Um, I understand that basically all they're saying is, to be the best, you have to be able to beat the best. But I'm with you. Here, it was always more of a beat yourself because you're the best team you're going to play all year kind of mentality of like you're playing better people in practice every day than you're going to play in 90% of the games this season, if not more. I mean, I like it. It gives you something to focus on. If you knew without a shadow of a doubt you were playing us for a natty, which I'm sure that's what he is preaching right now, that he thinks we're the best two teams in the country. Um, I would be interested to know, like, obviously right now he's not allowed to have actual practice. So right now it's just like an extra period of running or conditioning or something like you're saying. Um, like just like the beat Ohio State thing. So I like
Yeah,
it.
I
We
mean,
never
I
did
think
anything quite like it, but it definitely gives you like the ability to create a hatred towards a program, possibly.
yeah, I mean, when I first heard it, right, like it's one of those things where I understand the jokes, right? Like people outside of Michigan fan base were like, "Oh, shouldn't you focus on TCU?" I get that completely too. The thing about it is, right? You look at Michigan the past 2 years during the regular season, they take care of business. They handle business roughly um, up through the Big Ten championship, right? So you handle business. You won the Joe Moore Award-winning, offensive line twice right now. And then when you get to the playoffs, you make it to the first playoff game, and you get beat, right? Like Georgia out physical, basically just outmatches you physically, right? TCU, I felt like Michigan beat themselves. I feel like instead of a beat Georgia, I feel like you need to find ways to close, right? Michigan, even the past 2 years, Michigan was a playoff team. I don't think there was really an issue with saying that, right? But you saw the physicality against Georgia just completely outmatched, right? Maybe that beat Georgia thing is tied to the physicality, right? Like we have Bloody Tuesday, right? Is that potentially obviously when they're able to to ramp up, parts of practice where you can get more physical, right? I think that matters. And I think I'm curious to see if that's what that entails because it makes sense to me. I felt like when you play a team like a Georgia or an Alabama, you have to bring a different level of physicality. They didn't do that, and they got completely outmatched against Georgia. But finding a way to close, right? Close games, right? Like at TCU, there was no reason for them to lose that game, yet they found a way to lose it.
Yeah,
You
no doubt. I think that Michigan, like any team that's building on like a good quarterback or somebody like JJ McCarthy, who basically you get 3 years of JJ McCarthy. Obviously, when they played us, Cade McNamara starts the game. It just doesn't go very great. Doesn't really go a lot better when JJ McCarthy comes in either. That year it was us and Alabama. Like those were the best two teams in the country. I don't really think either team that we played that year had a great chance. I mean, obviously Michigan believed they did. They were a good team. Just didn't play a great game. But I really think not only that, but we also played a great game. Like it wasn't just that Michigan didn't. Um, versus this year, I really do believe that Michigan may have been the second best team, or at least the best team on their side of the playoff. I'm not sure you couldn't argue Ohio State was the second best team in the country, but um, I think if you're a Michigan fan, you made the playoffs 2 years in a row. You've won your conference 2 years in a row. You've fallen short against us in kind of an embarrassing, like, okay, like this is our first time being here. We kind of see now, like, what it takes. We're really happy because we finally got over the Ohio State hump. We've made a playoff. Okay, obviously we're not ready to compete. Versus then last year, you go undefeated, get over the Ohio State hump again, and roll into town as the number 2 team in the country. Kind of like, okay, we got a good chance. We have a very favorable matchup with TCU. Um, and then like you're saying, really don't do anything except do wrong things to lose it. Turnovers on the goal line,
know,
not opportunities to score, things like that. And so now in this year 3 with JJ McCarthy, which could possibly be his last year, you kind of bulked up like 2017 Georgia did. You're returning a lot of good players, a lot of old, mature talent. If you're a Michigan fan, you're through the roof. You're thinking 12-0, 13-0, beat Ohio State for the third time, win, the Big Ten, and then roll into town as the 1 or 2 seed, basically with your sights set on beating whoever you have as the matchup in the semifinal and playing possibly Georgia for Natty, basically to ruin a three-peat. So
yeah, I mean, ultimately, like I'm not going to keep harping on Michigan and everything like that. Like how they run their program is how they run their program. But the beat Georgia thing kind of helps as a perfect transition into the next portion of this show, and that's establishing why Georgia is now I would say, standard for college football. Right? When you look at Georgia in a sense of right what they're doing, right? You're back-to-back national champions. You're on the verge. Betting, if you're a betting person, right? They have the best odds to win a three-peat, as motivated, dedicated, in the brigade shows right here, as also JOWG. Um, you know, Basically, you look at it. You're also recruiting at an elite, historic notch, especially this class. Um, Listen, I just think it's one of these situations where Georgia has, I think, surpassed Alabama at this point. And I think when you look at Michigan instilling that beat Georgia, right, they could have chose beat Alabama, right? I mean, they could have chose anyone else. But I think it's telling at that point, the beat Georgia, right? Now, albeit you could probably say they have a historical tie to that and whatever, which is fair. But I think it does drive a point that right, like people look at us as a standard. That's where they want to get to. What are your thoughts on that?
yeah, I mean, right now, like we've talked about, recency, you're the team to beat right now. I mean, you just are. especially after the year Bama had last year, which it was a down year according to their standards. Basically lose 2 games really close, but played in a couple other games that you could have lost to. It's the thing people forget. I mean, they could have been 4-loss team at some point, but I think you're on top of the mountain until somebody knocks you off, and then to sustain a couple years. The big thing is we know at some point you're going to kind of have not a fall from grace, but you're not going to win 5 in a row, without dropping a game. So
Yeah.
the big
Yeah. I
thing
mean,
for us
if you
is
do that, that's insane.
yeah,
That's insane.
the big thing for us is just to sustain throughout this year, enjoy kind of this ride, kind of weather the storm, and then go into 2024 on the expanded playoffs. It would be great to know that you won the last 3 like new age championships where they were, the 4-team playoff, the normal conferences, kind of the whole thing like that. And I think Michigan thinks the same thing. I think that's what everybody's saying right now is Michigan, if you're looking at it, if you're looking at USC, I think a bunch of these schools this year you're going to see like this could be our last chance. Which obviously, like extended playoffs, you have a lot of chance next year. But this could be you could always be known as the team that won the last 4-team playoff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you talk about that standard, right? We talk about the standard. I'm going to introduce you a standard, folks, and it's also our sponsor, right? Apotheos Roastery, right? Listen, we talk about an elite standard, man. That coffee is absolutely elite, and I guarantee you, Kobe and JOGG in the brigade will tell you the same thing. Listen, go give them a shout. Go give them a follow on their social media accounts. On Instagram at Apotheos Roastery, Twitter at Apotheos Coffee. Folks, check out dgdpodcast.com/Apotheos. Go view their selection of coffee. And if the reason why we push our website is because when you use our link, 20% of every single bag that you purchase goes to the Classic City Collective. That because they're the official partner, coffee and cold brew partner, of the Classic City Collective. So use our link dgdpodcast.com/Apotheos. Go buy up all the K cups, all the coffee. Make Jason work up there harder than what he's already doing. Get you some coffee. It's great coffee. I actually did a giveaway last night, Kobe. A late night giveaway too at that. So we got a winner getting a couple bags of coffee there. Oh man, Classic City Collective dark roast. Chef's kiss is all I'm gonna say. Thanks Apotheos for sponsoring the show. But we're talking about this standard, right? Back to it. Listen, I think for the longest time Alabama was the standard, right? You looked at what they were doing, just sheer dominance, right? All these things, all these factors that play into it. And it's just fun to see, it's a great time to be a Dog fan because of the fact that, right, now you can kind of say, like, you're back-to-back champions, right, like, it's just a fun time to be a Georgia fan. JWG also says its season's going to be the best time to be a Georgia fan. Yeah. I'm with them. I'm with her, and I'm with the brigade here. When I look at, and I think you look at recruiting, right? You have to have all these pieces consistently, right? Recruiting on the field, and it's got to be consistently at an elite level on all aspects. Georgia's hitting that on the head, right? Nail on the head. It's interesting to see that Georgia took over Bama, if you will, as a standard. But at the same time, there's also some things that come with it, right? When you are the standard, that means every single team in America is gunning for you. So that means, Kirby has always preached about being the hunter, not the hunted, right? And I think if anyone is able to channel that focus and keep the message clear, exclude all the outside noise, I think it's Kirby Smart. I mean, you've played under him. I mean, what are your thoughts with that?
Yeah, like I kind of said earlier, he's worried about us. He's worried about getting us ready. He's not worried about what everybody else is doing. He's not, he doesn't have enough. He'd tell you he doesn't have enough time in the day to worry about our team and having us prepared, and his family, and worry about the Michigan Wolverines and what they're doing. Like there's not enough time in the day for that. Like at some point you got to make sure that our offensive line knows what they're doing, our running backs are doing what they're doing, our DBs know what coverage they're in, they know what to do against bracket or man or whatever they're doing, that they know. Our coaches know what we're trying to implement, game plan, and then also spending time with his wife and kids. That's a full time. That's a full time job there. So
Yeah, yeah,
he would definitely stress to you that he's one man and he can only handle taking care of the Georgia Bulldogs. And I think at some point he's done a really good job of that. And he would tell you that that's the same thing as a player you should worry about. That you can only worry about being in the right place, giving full effort, being attentive, learning, giving everything you got into the game plan and into practice and the weight room, and then also turn around and giving that same attention to school, and then turn around and giving that same attention to your family or your girlfriend or whatever kind of thing. And that's what the full-time job of the student athlete comes to as well. Like you can't be worried about, oh, well, this is what Alabama's doing or this is what Michigan's doing. It's like, no, it's like, this is what we're doing.
Yep. No, so I see Dog Day Afternoon here in the brigade says it's three-peat Kings about to make history, and some other fan bases big mad. And Israel is saying hello, everyone. Yeah, it is interesting. Like when we're looking at it right now, right? Like you always hear about teams that are elite and everything like that. Like a lot of people overlook this time of year, right? You've got July coming up real quick. Tell people, as a former player, why July matters in terms of your team and preparation and doing the things to to prepare for the upcoming season, right? Because if I'm not mistaken, there is I think now's the time where they kind of do their little combine, if I'm not mistaken, where they kind of just prepping for the season and everything. Do you know any about much more about that at the point?
Yeah. So at this point in July or in June right now, because let's see, July will start this weekend in the next week. It's really interesting and fun time kind of to be in Athens, depending on like your school schedule and stuff. But dead period's about to begin for recruiting. 4th of July is about to kind of wrap up. So all the coaches are about to use 2.5 weeks of vacation time. So it's going to be kind of quiet around the building for a few weeks. It's just going to be just going to be the strength staff. Um, you know, it's kind of like your last chance. We used to talk about it, between July 1st and like July 10th, give or take. Because you get a long weekend, or I don't know what they're going to do with July 4th being Tuesday, but you kind of get that maybe Monday off, so you get a long weekend. It's like one of the last opportunities that you have a long weekend until after the season. So like these 10 days are really the time to you want to go see mom and dad, you want to go to the beach, you want to get away for the weekend, get out of Athens, you want to go to the pool and drink with all your buddies all day. Like, just don't be here. Nobody's here. You had a heavy lift on Friday. They're going to give you off till Wednesday. But kind of one of those things of you spend 10 days with just the strength staff or maybe even more. You really are kind of getting focused in on something maybe more individual. And then, like you're saying, we always do the Georgia Combine, which I think is a huge help because it kind of gives you a set of base numbers as a freshman, as a sophomore, as a mid-year enrollee, whoever you are, that this is the NFL Combine. These are the numbers by position, and these are the averages. And then here's your numbers, and then you can kind of show them, well, this is where I am compared to the average person that ran the NFL Combine this year. This is where I am compared to a top 30 pick that ran the NFL Combine this year. That just kind of helps you realize, like, okay, I really probably need to work on my speed. I need to work on my strength. And then after that's all over and the coaches are back, you flush worried about that, and you're getting ready for fall camp. And once fall camp kind of ramps up at, I'd imagine, like July 25th, 28th, give or take, and it'll run through probably August 15th, 16th, something like that.
Because you got the dog days of summer up on the 29th as well, which that's more of a recruiting thing. But I think that's when business will really be officially picked up.
Yeah,
at the latest.
Those
right?
Well, it all depends. I don't know school schedule. So how fall camp has always worked when I was there, and that I've known, is basically you have to give student athletes off for finals. No matter what semester it is, you have to give them like a grace period to be able to take finals, obviously. So you get a small grace period at like at the end of July, basically like 3 days to take your finals. The day after the last final, you report to camp that morning, 8 o'clock, and then you basically start camp that day, and then camp goes until typically the day before the first day of class is when you check out of the hotel. So then you check out, can go home, do laundry, do all that stuff, get ready for school the next day. But then like camp style practices may not be over until another week or two, depending on what everybody's schedule looks like. So
gotcha.
at least not in the hotel.
I know you. Well, yeah, I was about to say. I know we talked about the combine and everything, and now the information coming out of that might be kind of hard pressed to find, right? But we can always kind of look at what I'm looking forward to, right? Like what do we want to see coming out of that, right? Like I don't know if you heard about it, but Raylan Wilson was on, I think, the Players Lounge talking with Aaron Murray, and then I guess there was some talk about him locking up, clamping down Brock Bowers. I felt that interesting because now that we look into this, right? Like, you had I don't know if you heard about back when he during the what is it, bowl practice, right? During the bowl practices, clocking 23 miles an hour on the catapult system, right? I think for me, I look at like Raylan Wilson will be an intriguing piece for me, right? Just to kind of see like we know he's fast, but like I'm not necessarily an advocate for the 40 times as much, but it'll be interesting to see what he does, in the 40 and kind of things like that. So I want to pose a question to you, and we can kind of go back and forth on this as well. But are there any things you want to see, or even if it is a specific player, what are you looking forward to do with this combine, or when this information comes out, when it does, if it does?
Yeah, and obviously there'll be a couple guys that are tuning in pretty heavily with either relationships with certain players, or maybe a coach, an inside coach source, or not even a coach, but like just some inside source. There will be some numbers that will come out from the combine. I think really they run 40s, they do verticals, and they do broads. It's pretty simple combine stuff. It's not the bench press. It's not every once in a while maybe the L cone here or there, but most of the time you have enough players that it's really a three thing. It's a vertical, it's a broad, it's the 40, and you get 2 attempts at the 40. I think obviously the vertical can be very interesting to see when in talks of like pure athleticism. But I think where everybody's wanting to see the money made is the 40 time. I mean,
yeah, rightfully
even
so.
if it's not the best indicator of people's abilities, people want to see you run the 40 and see it be a fast time, really. I mean,
Yeah.
if you were like, oh, Raylan Wilson ran a 4.31, we would be like,
uh-oh.
He's moving. You know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah, I think that like I said, with Raylan being the intriguing facet there, right? Like you've got Raylan, but I think at the same time, like keep in mind all the speed that we brought in, right? Like Anthony Evans, and you still got Arian Smith, obviously, but Yazid Haynes, things like that. Like it'll be interesting to see some of these guys, like, just see where they are. And I get this feeling deep down that there's going to be a name on that roster that we might not be thinking about right now that just completely just wows folks when all said and done. I'm trying to think of a name that might be that way, and I might pose that question in a second.
Makai Muse.
See, that was my thought.
I
Like,
think he'll run a fast 40. I mean,
see,
obviously, I don't know.
yeah,
We'll probably know. He'll be one of those guys that, when if and when numbers and stuff get leaked, it's gonna be big name guys. I mean, it's not gonna be Makai Muse. No offense,
I
Makai.
mean, it'd be ideal. It'd be ideal, unless it's just something absurd, maybe.
Yeah.
Like that's the only way I could think something like that right there. If I had to choose like the one player outside of, I already mentioned Raylan Wilson, but I think another player for me is, right, when you look at these things right there. Give me Damon Wilson. I want to see, because he's the edge rusher, right? I think it's interesting to kind of get a feel for what we're looking like, right, at his size, to see how fast that kid can go. You know, ultimately, a straight line 40 doesn't necessarily gauge what you're looking to see on the field, right? I think we're both aware of that. But if he runs like a, I don't know, like a low 4.5 or mid 4.5, or even into the 4.4s, um, that's gonna shock some folks. You know, um, I'm curious also to see like some pure athleticism, like you mentioned in the broad jump and stuff, right? Like, you really have to break down these kind of, events, if you will, to understand like what it translates to on the field, if it does.
Well, at the end of the day, like we've talked about, there's only so much that this translates to on the football field. When it, like, at some point, you can either play or you can't. It's kind of the same thing. Like N'Kobe Dean, people worried about what he was going to be able to do. Is he a first round talent? All these things. He's going to be the starting middle linebacker for the Philadelphia Eagles this year. Like, you're going to get to see a lot of what he has versus people are worried. Oh, he's going to run a slow 40. Oh, people are worried he's going to he could be a little injury prone or have some existing injuries. Um, and then like you think about some of the fastest 40 times for receivers ever and how they just haven't really panned out. I think like, only a very small percent of the top 25 fastest wide receiver times or DB times ran at the combine ever have gone on to have like good careers. You really don't want to be the guy running the 4.23. They're telling you that there's something going on there, that you're either too thin or too small or something. You're not that guy, I guess. So I'd like to see some good times, but obviously history's kind of told you if you hear some crazy times that there could be more to the story as well.
Yeah, no doubt. I think looking at July, right? Like, it kind of, you look on the horizon, right? You talked about fall camp starting here at the end of the, end of July. When it comes to the dead period, man, like in July, right? I think it helps to have SEC media days, because, like you mentioned earlier, it's going to kind of be dead on campus, which is, it's just one of these weird times, right? It's probably a college football fan's least favorite time of the year, right? Like when the pure dead period and everything. Um, but when you look at, right, like when we look at the end of July, right, we're going to talk more about this as the time comes closer, right? I'm sure we will. Is there anything in July that you're interested to keep an eye out for, if you will? I'm curious on it. I'll go ahead and start. I'm excited and curious, and have my eyes up for the SEC media days. It seems like big news has been broken, right, at SEC media days. Um, in the last year with Texas and Oklahoma joining, all this stuff, like that stuff was huge news. But then you also had the drama from Saban and Jimbo too, which was, it makes for must see TV. Is there anything in the month of July that you're like kind of got your eyes on already and kind of anxious to see what happens or what's going on?
Yeah, like you said, July just isn't a great time. Even you said for college sports fans or college football fans, and really any sports fans, like literally, the MLB All-Star break coming up, those 3 days, there are zero sports on TV. There is no basketball, no hockey, no football, no baseball. There is nothing. So definitely July is just a tough month for sports fans. Like you're saying, recruiting visits end. So there's a dead period. So you don't even get to talk about, there's, this recruit's coming to campus, or this recruit canceled his visit. Now he's going to Florida State or whatever. We're kind of all clinging to media days at this point. And I don't foresee media day this year, being quite as dramatic as media days last year. Like you're saying, the Jimbo Nick Saban drama was great. Breaking the Texas Oklahoma news was great. I just don't see anything near the level of either one of those, unless Eli Drinkwitz comes out and has something to say about Shane Beamer or something to kind of stir the pot around. Because honestly, I don't think anybody's going to say anything about Nick. Nobody's going to say anything about Kirby that he's going to entertain. You're going to have to fire up some mid-level SEC coaches talking about that, well, somebody's a clown and they're running a clown show over in Missouri or something to get anything that bad.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. When you look at SEC media days, you're not going to even expect anything out of Kirby Smart. Like he keeps it by design, right? Like you'll probably get a long, like it is what it is, and he does this masterfully. is just get a long drawn out intro speech, right, and then only enough time for a couple questions. So, as a Georgia fan, I don't even know if SEC media days is all. You'll catch some things, but it won't necessarily be as entertaining that you would expect from a guy like a Lane Kiffin, right? Or, like you mentioned, Eli Drinkwitz, right? Like those guys will go up there and they'll talk, and they're kind of quick with their comment or their opening statements, if you will. That opens up more time for questions, right? You just don't see that with Kirby Smart, and I think Nick Saban as well. To take their opening statements and extend them out, right, so that they don't have to do as many questions. Listen, I hate to sound bad about this, but I guarantee you're going to hear all season incidents is a big topic for Georgia in the SEC media days. It's going to happen. So I'm prepping you now. It's going to happen. I guarantee you, I guarantee you won't even hear that much about anything in the upcoming season. That's just my thought there. But kind of as we move on into the next piece, right? Like I want to take time to bring up our second sponsor for the show, Alumni Hall. Alumni Hall, as you see this shirt right there on the screen. Listen, this thing's comfortable as shit. I'm just going to leave that there. DGDpodcast.com/Alumni Hall. Learn more about Alumni Hall on our website and go shop as well. Licensed Nike, Cutter and Buck, Yeti products, 47, just a few names. They got it all, man. Just go check them out. Follow them on Twitter, Instagram at Alumni Hall UGA, located in Athens and the Oconee Connector. Check them out. If you're in store, mention the DGD podcast, and you can get 10% off your order in store. So just giving you a heads up there. Thank you, Alumni Hall. Now, I think this is where it's going to get interesting, right? Everybody wants to focus on everything except on the field production with Georgia. So it's time for this doubting. In my opinion, I don't want to sound too homerish, but if you're still doubting Georgia at this point, I don't know where the hell you've been. I still find it interesting that people still find ways to doubt Georgia. It's happened every year for the past 3 years, right? Since we won the back-to-back, it's coming on. Kirk Herbstreit was on Pat McAfee and basically was just doubling down, saying that Alabama's going to win the national championship. And my initial thoughts was, Alabama's got more question marks than Georgia by far. And I'm sitting there thinking about it. It's like, Yeah, then ESPN drops a couple rankings, things like this. Like I'm not necessarily fond of the rankings, but I thought it was absolutely laughable to have Georgia third on the list. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a second, but I do want to go back to, Kirk Herbstreit's point. I find it interesting that you hear, I heard that, and it was just like, give me Alabama running it, winning it all. But in the same sentence, you can have those same people saying that, oh, nobody doubts Georgia. That's exactly what that is. Kobe, I'll let you take a little bit. Did you hear about the Herb Street comments?
Yeah, I heard it. It always surprises me with sometimes with Herbie. And I know they have to. It's part of their job and this, that, and the other. But to me, at this point in the year, it's June. Like Herbie, give me Ohio State, buddy. Like, give me your at least give me your alma mater. You know what I mean? Like I can get behind if at this point in the season there's nothing really to go on and you go, yeah, I think Ohio State could be one of the favorites to win it all. I'd take that from him. I guess the Alabama thing from him that doesn't make sense is he doesn't want to be lazy and pick us to three-peat. They would tell you that would be the easy pick. We're the odds-on favorite. He obviously doesn't want to pick Michigan, being an Ohio State guy. He's going to really get it. Um, and then outside of that, to me, he could have picked LSU possibly. Could have gone a little more non-conventional. Could say that Florida State's going to make a run. Um, I just guess I'm with you on that. Alabama has a lot of question marks that need to be answered in the first 4 weeks of the season before I'm comfortable telling you that I think they're going to be a playoff caliber team. Are they going to have a good defense? Yes, I think so. Are they going to have an offense? That is still a question. How good is the receiving room going to be? How good is the quarterback room going to be? How good is the running back room going to be? Can the offensive line protect the quarterback? Can they run block? Can they pass pro? There are going to be a lot of questions answered week 2 with Texas. I mean, because people are asking the same questions about Texas. Can they be a threat this year? To win it all. To me, there's a lot of teams. It just feels a little lazy to call Bama at this point. I mean, there's USC, there's Washington with Michael Penix. There are just a lot of people you could have kind of put some chips down on and been like, I really like what they're doing. But instead, you go, well, Nick's won 6 of them since '08, and he's played in probably 4 more. I think he plays in, another one and wins another one. It's like they've picked Alabama to win the SEC every year since what? 2010, 2009,
Something
something
like
like
that.
that. Like
Something like
basically
that. Yeah.
the media has favorited them to win the SEC every year at that point. Even the years that they haven't won it the year before, they're picking them to win it next year, which is fine. I mean, that's good. They deserve that at some extent. But I just don't know that you could pick them to win it all this year, kind of thing. Not
I
yet.
mean,
Not yet.
well, I mean, think if we look at it though, right, from a high level, Georgia has to replace the quarterback. Georgia got a new offensive coordinator, right? The thing about it is, to me though, is you have to look at the personnel. And when you take a look at Alabama, I'm not saying Alabama won't be a good team. I think they have a good shot to make it to Atlanta, right? But the question to me is when you take a deeper dive into the personnel through and the things that have happened this offseason, you take a look at you have Jalen Milroe, you have Ty Simpson, right? Dylan Lonergan comes in this cycle, recruiting wise, and then you sit there. Obviously, you're losing Bryce Young, right? You're losing Will Anderson, even though Dallas Turner will be just fine there. But offensively is where my question lies, right? You bring in Tyler Buckner from the portal after your A day, if you're an Alabama fan, and you have to look at it from a third party perspective. It's you sit there. Why did you bring him in? Right? People they're going to say familiarity with the system, right? But if I saw what I saw last season when Milroe was in, it wasn't promising to me. It just wasn't. So it leads you to believe that, well, you really just don't have that solid set guy. Right? Even though you can hear Miller be the guy, this and that, like fair, whatever. We'll see. I'm just not sold on that quarterback room, and that's while you have personnel around you, the quarterback situation is always the most important. 100% will always be the most important. So when you look at the situation there with Buckner and Ty Simpson and Milrow, obviously you can sit there and argue that we've got a quarterback competition, but I don't think it's nearly as open as it seems Georgia's is. Right, Georgia's is basically like I think we kind of know the writings on the wall that Carson Beck's the guy, right? We don't know at Alabama. Like I'm curious if folks from within Alabama's program and the fans that really follow Alabama deep, deep like that would know either. I think you have speculation because I just what I watched from their spring game, I just wasn't sold. And then you pair that with last season with Milrow, I've got my hesitations. I think we'll find out come week 2 for Alabama, right? But that could
I
be a
think I'm
huge.
with you too, though. Like, I think the portal, the going and getting him out of the portal after A-Day was just a little not concerning, really, but just a little telling of like, okay, they're not happy with how they've recruited and stacked this quarterback room. We're going to go get a guy that obviously knows the system, knows this offense really well, but it's looming during a time of like, but we haven't named a starter. If you had named Milrow the starter and then gone and got this guy, it's like, okay, I understand what you're doing. You're building depth in your quarterback room in case somebody gets hurt. You can jog somebody out there that at least knows all the calls and all the checks. But
Mm-hmm.
but you're really bringing somebody in under the scope of this quarterback job is still wide open.
It's just, I mean, optics play a part in everything. I mean, like I said, with how things went, like, if I watched G Day, right, I think it was kind of obvious for us to see Carson Beck just looked like the best quarterback, right? He looked the most comfortable. All those signs point to him being the guy, right? I think that's kind of easy to figure out. But when you watch A Day, and I watched it, you know, no one completely separated themselves, and it was obvious. You know what I mean? So add that to the fact that you bring in a Notre Dame quarterback, backup quarterback at that, like, it just wasn't as successful. It makes you wonder what's going on. But at the same time, right? Like to kind of revert back to the main topic here on the discussion. What's up?
I just guess like you're talking about. I think for every team that we could poke holes in and ask question marks, like you're saying, you could say, "Oh, the Dogs are replacing Stetson Bennett. Oh, the Dogs are replacing Todd Monken." After that, you kind of start running out of people you're replacing. You're replacing Jalen Carter, you're replacing Chris Smith. Yes and yes. You really are reloading those positions. Versus like you look at Alabama, you're replacing an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator. You just lost, arguably the best quarterback to ever play at the University of Alabama. You just lost one of probably the best defenders to ever play at the University of Alabama. And now you're going to tell me that this team is actually going to be better because of it. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing that
It just kind of raises some eyebrows, if you will. I mean, listen, games have to be played, right?
no, I mean, but
So, I mean, anything is possible, right? Because we thought after 2021, Kobe, that team was, we thought that team was just one of the best defenses we've seen, and then 2022 happened. You know what I mean? So it's like,
But I guess again, though, statistically speaking, 2021 was way better than 2022 defense.
yeah,
Not way better, but in terms of like all time greatness, 2021 was still the defense. 2022 was extremely good too, but they give up the 30 to LSU. They give up the the big
41.
score.
Yeah, they gave up 41 to Ohio State, whatever. Yeah.
And I'm not saying that 2021 wouldn't have. I mean, I think we ran into a good team in Ohio State, and I think that LSU is a lot of garbage touchdowns. I mean, he still won by 3 scores. So it's one of those things that Alabama, like, yes, you still have Dallas Turner. Yes, you still have a couple good wide receivers, but I think that their core is just not what people are used to it being over there.
Yeah. I mean, let's but kind of revert it back, right? The fact that you see this art, you see Kirk Herbstreit going on Pat McAfee show. The telling and the damning thing to me is this. So ESPN drops a report, a ranking from the 2020s decade, right? That's 2020 to now. Georgia might have added won 2 national titles out of the 3 so far. So with that being said, how do you have Georgia third behind Alabama and Ohio State? How do you have them third?
So you got this explanation, because I actually did not see that tweet or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was like some kind of ranking. I don't know what exactly. I'd have to try to find it. I might put it in the show notes if I can find that specifically. But basically, ranking teams based off of right from 2020 to present. And you had Alabama at number 1, Ohio State at 2, and then Georgia at 3. Now, I guess for me, I guess that proves, if anything, that national titles don't mean 100% of everything. But that's a pretty damn good indicator that you're doing something right. And the fact that you got 2/3 of the titles in this decade so far, how
Yeah,
can you put it?
I would be interested. I mean, I obviously would probably agree to some extent that those would be your top 3 teams. I wouldn't agree in that order. I mean, basically, you look at it. Alabama has appeared in 2 natties so far and won 1 and lost 1. Georgia's appeared in 2 natties and gone 2-0. Ohio State's who lost that game in 2020, if I remember right. So they've appeared in 1 natty and appeared in 1 playoff. Um, I could see that being an argument for the top 3 teams, but I just don't agree, like you're saying, in the order necessarily. I think if Michigan would have beat TCU this year, you could argue Michigan as well would be one of those top teams. I don't know where it kind of runs after that, but Michigan and Ohio State, I would say, would be neck and neck since the 2020 season has started. Only the slight edge to Ohio State being that they played in the Mickey Mouse Natty that was the 2020, where they only had to play like 4 or 5 games, and then they had to change the rules for them to qualify.
Yeah, that's a rabbit hole within itself. Just gonna leave that there. But not this whole Dalton Georgia thing. It just feels Kirby. There's no doubt in my mind that he finds this kind of information and literally just puts gasoline on it and throws it to his team and just lights the fire.
Well, like you're saying, people are talking about the brainwashing that's going on of like, oh, people, talking about that Kirby has people believing they're going to go 8-4. I think some of that gets blown out of proportion, but I think a lot of the guys on the team, and especially, you give somebody with a big personality like Nolan Smith that's very loud and not letting people forget about things. And then especially the fact that he was hurt for a majority of the season. You don't have as many of those distractions keeping you off social media and watching ESPN and the morning talk shows. You hear College Game Day when they pick Tennessee across the board to beat you at home. You hear when Kirk Herbstreit goes on Pat McAfee and says, "Well, I think that the Alabama is going to win the Natty this year, no doubt." And then all of a sudden, at the end of the year, when they're going, "Y'all doubted us," and people are, rolling over going, nobody ever doubted you. You were the odds-on favorite to win, all these things. It's like, just because Vegas didn't doubt us doesn't mean that all these reporters didn't in June and July and at different times in the season going, well, I'm just not sure that this Georgia team has what it takes to win the Natty.
Yeah, gotta love it, man. Absolutely love it. But I think you look at it and listen, when all is said and done, you're just adding fuel to the three-peat fire, man. Like if we three-peat, I mean, we got to look back to these moments, and if we do that, then it's just one of these things where like, listen, this is why you don't doubt UGA. You know what I mean? Last thing before we wrap this thing up, man, we're gonna take questions from the brigade Discord here, folks. So with that being said, I will pose the one question that we got, but it is the biggest topic that we like to do, and that is your recruiting. So with that being said, let me open up the show question here. And earlier we had DGD Pat, by the way, and he poses a question for the show. Do we foresee any big time commits between now and July 4th holiday? To that, I say yes. Excuse me, wholeheartedly yes. Listen, July 4th is a big time holiday, right? Kobe, if you keep up with it, you're aware a lot of kids like popping on July 4th. And you've also got a kid, Ayuni, Michael Ayuni, I think that's how you say him. I hope I'm not butchering it. Expected to commit June 30th, so this Friday. You're looking between Georgia, Bama, and Michigan. If you're not familiar with that's a 4-star offensive lineman. Kid's huge, 6'7", 300 plus. I think it was like 6'7", 330 or something like that, I think. Massive kid. Kobe, do you got anything to elaborate with?
I'll say this as far as that Sam Pittman did a lot of great things for your offensive line. I'm not sure that that anybody's ever going to be able to replicate exactly how well he recruited and developed. Matt Luke had some big hits and some big misses in his time here, but I would say Stacey Searles is shaping up to make a push similar to Sam Pittman in his time here. Big bodies are back for the University of Georgia.
That's interesting to think too, though. But yeah, I'm with you.
We definitely thinned up under Matt Luke a little bit. Not a lot.
We did.
Not a lot. Not a ton.
You went from like a 320 average to like a 310, 315, which kind of matters though. But
it does. I mean,
also, when you're running this type of schemes and stuff that we were running, it makes sense.
But also with Todd Monken, you got to be a little thinner to be able to run the speed. But one thing you've definitely seen under this class and its commitment so far, and the guys that you'll have commit in the future is if that number says 6'6", 6'7", know that we're interested. We may not get you, but I mean, we're back to looking a lot harder than we were. We went through a little bit of a time there where really 6'5", maybe 6'6", if you were athletic, was as big as we were wanting you.
But yeah, so Pat, to answer that question, wholeheartedly yes. Kobe, with that being said, let's wrap this thing up, man. Also, if you're curious about joining our Discord, folks, it's in the show notes. If you have issues, just message us at the DGD Podcast on Twitter, Instagram. Message us. We'll get you in the Discord. It's a free community for dog fans. We talk recruiting. Anything you want to talk about, we talk about it. So keep in mind, if you're curious about the Discord, that is where we talk a lot of show stuff. We talk, like I said, recruiting. Anything involved in the team, that's where we do it, but it's all things dogs.
Even some exclusive stuff.
Absolutely. See. Any last words before the holidays? Speaking of, I hope everyone has a great 4th of July as well. As a owner of 2 dogs, make sure keep in mind for your dogs and veterans as well. PTSD is real, folks. I promise you.
Have you noticed that the whole time that my macro is blinking?
What does that mean? Oh, no.
It just means I didn't clear the timer on it earlier, but isn't that annoying? Anybody noticed that the whole show? It's just me.
I don't even know how to answer this. Don't know how to respond to that.
All right, fellas. Maybe one day we'll find Juan again. Maybe.
If you I've heard that Rude's, Pat, and Juan are on the back of milk cartons. I think Mayola or Pet. I'm not sure. Whatever GOG drinks was not the answer.
It's the dog days of summer. It's feeling like the dog days of the DGD podcast. We're a little thin on roll call today.
Absolutely. Listen, we're show covering all things dogs, and like I said, 4th of July fireworks. Keep in mind the dogs, man. Medication. Get your dog some medication if you need to. Go to your vet. Hurry up now. Just gotta leave that be. Let that be known. All right. I know it's a little bit random, but it's not.
It is.
Joel. Apparently,
Joel, Utah's winning a couple positive points today with you showing up.
Yeah.
There's some extra credit in class today.
Well, I just saw, so we'll kind of do some breaking news. One of the tight end targets that Georgia was looking at, Carter Nelson, has announced his commitment to Nebraska. So it looks like it's kind of expected on that one, but Carter Nelson looks to be headed to Lincoln, Nebraska, which tells me that I think Georgia's still extremely confident, might I add, on Riddell and Heinrich. So Georgia's still set right there, which we'll talk a little bit more recruiting next time if need be. But yeah, other than that, Kobe, hope you have a great weekend. Hope everyone listening and watching has a great 4th of July holiday. We will be back Wednesday, bright and early at noon. Right, love that oxymoronic statement there. But with that being said, we'll catch y'all on the next episode. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.